The delusional Ron Johnson complains that his delusional riot claims are being silenced, which they're not. The cognitive dissonance of the January 6th Capitol riot has been gnawing away at Senator Ron Johnson for weeks. Johnson, who's a Wisconsin Republican, whose enthusiasm for the former squatter Donald Trump has blossomed to potentially self-destructive dimensions, and it's obvious that he's not an intelligent man. But somewhere in his mind, he is able to vaguely discern a contradiction between two principles. One, on the one hand, he equates Trump and his sycophants with unconscious adherence to law and order, which they're not. This belief has inspired Johnson to rigorously dismiss years of evidence of Trump's crimes. On the other hand, he personally witnessed a violent mob of Trump sycophants assaulting the police officers and resulting in more than 100 injuries and many serious and several deaths. Johnson has been flailing about desperately in search of a resolution to this contradiction. At a hearing that month, he suggested to one witness the vast majority of Trump sycophants are pro-law enforcement. No, they're not. And the last thing that they would do is violate the law. The very first thing they would do is violate the law. He used the same hearing to propose that the riot had actually been instigated by a small card of Democratic infiltrators posing as pumpkin tit sycophants, and that's not what the case was. Then last week, Johnson returned to the subject. I knew those were people who love this country. If you support Trump, then you don't love this country. That truly respect law enforcement? No, they don't. And they would never do anything to break the law. They did everything to break the law. And so he claims he wasn't concerned, but I was. Now had the tables been turned, and Joe, this is going to get me in trouble, had the tables been turned and Pumpkin Tits had won the election and tens of thousands of Black Lives Matters and Antifa, he's like, then I might have been concerned. Yeah, but Antifa had nothing to do with this, and neither did Black Lives Matter. These comments predictably set up a firestorm, basically, including frequent questions about the racial undertones of Johnson's attributing violent intent to a to a hypothetical black protest while dismissing the violence of a very real white one. One point to make is that Johnson seemed not to discern any contradiction between this claim, but that he was perfectly safe during the insurrection with his previous claim that the insurrection had been instigated by Democratic wing infiltrators, which they weren't. After all, if a hardened cadre of radical Democrats had penetrated the Capitol and were prowling its quarters, wouldn't Johnson have been in some danger? Another point to make is that we actually did experience an election where Trump did win in 2016 only by the joke of the Electoral College because he didn't really win, and there wasn't a violent insurrection to overturn that result. But somehow this pertinent history did not calm Johnson's fear of the Black Lives Matter as an insurrectionary menace. The best defense of Johnson's comments would be that the contrast between the real and the imagined riots was not racial but political. Johnson would have been threatened by an anti-Trump riot anyway, but he was safe during a pro-Trump riot because the rioters understood he was on their side. Understandably, Johnson has refrained from making that particular defense. Instead, he has presented himself as a victim of cancel culture, and Johnson has written a Wall Street Journal op-ed headlined, "I won't be silenced," which he technically isn't being silenced anyway. It's a clever choice to change the subject from the substance of his delusional and authoritarian claims to his right to express them. Johnson does not present any evidence that anybody is even trying to silence him, because nobody is trying to silence him anyway, and nor is it clear how they might succeed if they wanted to, and there's no boss who can be pressured into firing him, and his every utterance continues to command wide media attention. Instead, Johnson equates the fact that his comments drew negative coverage as a result that he predicted in the interview, and he's claiming that he's being censored, which not true. An unbiased free press is essential in a democracy, he writes, but the censorship of conservative perspectives in today's cancel culture is antithetical to freedom. And censorship is when the government prevents the dissemination of speech or thoughts. It is not when newspapers write critical stories about politicians. But this fucking much can be said on Johnson's behalf. He's not acting out of cynicism. He is not spinning or pushing a message about January 6th, but he's following an obviously genuine obsession. He refuses to accept that his fellow Trump sycophants supported a coup, and so he summons the phantasmal threat of the left censoring him. But here are the real stormtroopers you see. Putatively objective reporters oppressing Johnson through their coverage. It's almost as if by conjuring a totalitarian enemy, and Johnson has created the justification for this violent uprising.